I'm going to go real fast because y'all know who I am by now. I'm Jeremy from Virtual World Arcade and create VR LB content.
So I'm Tim, I'm from Zero Latency. We build large-scale free-roam virtual reality systems. We do everything from the setup and the training all the way through to support maintenance and also operate some of our own venues and create content. We're about to open our 30th venue. We've got 6 games, onwards and upwards.
My name is Doug Griffin. I'm with Nomadic. We're actually not a free roam. I wouldn't call us free roam. We're more like on rails. We're a platform to develop and deploy a new medium of entertainment where you can physically engage in a very natural way with virtual environments.
Hi, my name is Jeff Ledwick with Hyperspace XR. We are building a similar type of thing where it's not so much free roam, but more of a walkthrough experiences where they're very physical. We create all effects that allow developers to really tap into this type of building these types of experiences.
So let's go ahead and get a better understanding of everybody's businesses and what makes you guys unique. Could you briefly describe to us what's your business model and how does your business generate revenue?
We're a platform, so we actually don't build content ourselves. We partner with content developers. We have an SDK. We're kind of part digital, part physical platform. We've got an SDK that works with Unity. Our Unreal one's on the way as well. We integrate a lot of third-party components, whether those are OptiTrack systems, striker guns, things off the shelf like that. We also integrate a lot of sensors, optical encoders, linear potentiometers, things that track stuff in space. And we allow people to build fantastic content where guests can engage naturally. Sometimes we take our giant arcade machine, and by giant I mean 1,200 square feet. So it's a large space that you walk through. If you consider that an arcade machine, sometimes we open our own arcades and we put that arcade machine in there. And sometimes we put our arcade machine in other people's arcades. So we can be an owner-operator or we can be a partner with an operator as well. The basic business model is partnership and rev share. So we collect all the coins in that arcade machine and we divvy them out between content partner and operator and ourselves at the end of each month.
Very similar model in the same way. We use a different type of tracking. We use Windows Mixed Reality, keeping our costs down, but we also provide a solution for venues to be able to operate at high throughput. A lot of what we're hearing from venues is they don't understand how to monetize and how to operate at high throughputs, and so we feel like we've cracked that code. And then on the other side, working with developers, we created our first high-end piece of content, and really just to show and set the bar for what we can do. And now working with other developers to be able to do that. And really it comes from the venues, working with the venues, installation on a setup cost, and then a revenue share on the back end to incentivize developers to build this kind of compelling content.
And real quick, what's the square footage, the size of your office?
We're at 800 square feet. We started out with about a 3,000 square foot, shopped it out, and I think in the future that would be really fun to create, but a lot of people don't have that kind of square footage. So we've brought it down to basically a location-based console that's the same for every developer so that you can get your content into any location that we have. And so we're a 20 by 40 unit, 800 square feet.
So we have a model where we do operate a couple of our own venues, but the majority of our business is selling equipment and then we take an ongoing licensing fee. So it's very similar to a franchise model. We do a lot for that money. We provide all content. We provide 24/7 support. We provide a series of software as a service offerings online for people to manage their venues, take bookings, manage their bookings, and also some BI tools, plus a whole bunch of sort of hardware management, online knowledge base to allow operators to go in, do online training, and also troubleshoot any technical issues. So it's a pretty broad offering. And then we take a percentage. It's 18% of the tickets sold. Comes back to head office to fund all that development. We don't collect the coins. They collect the coins and then we invoice them. And our systems range between about 1,600 square feet to 2,200 square feet. I think bigger is better, but to your point, Jeff, that it is difficult to find those spaces. So I think the big barriers are cost and space. Ultimately, operators want to get as much ROI as they can per square foot as quickly as possible.
Thank you. So size being one of the differentiators, how is the walkthrough, the free roam? How's your business different from a typical 8-station standalone booth type of VR arcade? Whether it's 4D effects and what do you guys offer?
At Nomadic, we do quite a few things. So there's 40 effects. There's environmental effects like wind. There are vibration in the floor, things like that. You'll also find levers, button boxes, a complete 3-DOF motion simulator. So you actually get on a helicopter and it flies and it vibrates and wind blows and you tilt and move, all while in VR. You don't have to take your headset off to do that. So there's a lot of those sort of effects complete throughout the entire experience. And what's nice about that is you never use a controller. We never have to guide someone on which buttons to push. We kind of just send them in and they learn and explore on their own. Yeah.
I think in the same way, it's really just what you can't do at home. I mean, I think 8 stations are great, and it seems like the business model is starting to work in that way. But to your point, it's buttons, it's levers, it's effects, it's wind, it's cold, it's rumble. You know, those things that you're just not going to be able to get at home. And I think that speaks to replayability of people watching new content come out and really get off their couch, away from their 4K TVs, and into the doors of these venues.
If I could, I'm going to interrupt just a little bit because I think the arcades are really difficult. I think the staffing to customer ratio is really hard. You tend to have to manage 1 to 4 people, help them with their headsets. You have to sit there for 15 minutes while they do their experience. I think it's a really challenging model that has to be overcome. We have to simplify that process to make it really effective. One of the things I like about Nomadic, and one of the reasons I don't call us free roam, is we don't send a group of people into a room to own it themselves for the next half hour. We actually send up to 6 groups separated by 4 or 5 minutes apart, moving through that 15-minute long experience. So we could do 60 people an hour in our 1,200 square foot play space, which is significantly better with a much lower staffing ratio than you would find in a VR arcade, at the expense of much more CapEx along the way.
So our model is more, our thesis is having a large open space is easier, cheaper, and you can have more diverse content. A lot of our games, pretty much all of them, reuse the space, so you will travel through potentially 8 different environments. You get to have really long travel time. I think that's really important for that level of immersion. It's definitely something you can't get at home. It doesn't fit everywhere, admittedly, because it is a larger footprint, but there's something quite profound about being able to walk for, thinking in feet, sort of 60 feet, on a run. And that flexibility, we find that flexibility for people to move through the space and feel that they own it really heightens that immersion. And I guess part of what we do is we've actually increasingly taking out as much complexity as we can. As part of going with our new Gen 2 system with Windows Mixed Reality, less moving parts, less bespoke stuff allows you to create a platform that with an SDK, any content creator can bring their content across, and that's looking pretty powerful. We've got one working with Dark Slope to bring Scary Girl across. We've got 2 other third-party IPs we want to bring across. They're in negotiating, and it's going to be pretty easy to bring them across. If you've already got a VR game, it's a matter of, it's measured in sort of weeks, not months, to port it across to the system, which I think is really powerful going forwards. Ultimately, being able to bring as much great content on as quickly as possible is going to be really, really important as we build out the zero latency platform to make sure that people want to keep coming back and they want to play different things. We can appeal to demographics, and making that as frictionless as possible is pretty important to scaling.
Thank you. So each of you, your businesses offer a turnkey solution for what you do at your own locations. So could you explain to us why invest in this large-scale, warehouse-scale, walk through a bigger than this arena type of space? Why invest in that, and how would you describe the current state of the business's return on investment versus where you see it going in the future? What does that trend look like, and why invest in this type of experience?
I think it's too early still. Even zero latency, which has been out the longest of any of us. Zero latency VR arcade, I think VR studios have been out the longest, I believe. It's still very early. All of us are, still modifying our experiences and our platforms and how we're bringing it to market. I think it's early to kind of talk about exact financial performance. I think some of the things that make Nomadic really useful and beneficial is I think we deliver the highest fun per square foot. If you're a guest, that physical engagement adds so much to the experience. It's really hard to overemphasize that. It's really incredible what you can do when you're physically engaged in a natural way. And we really focus on high replayability and high throughput. So I think we believe that we provide the highest revenue per square foot as well. Again, though, compared to zero latency, we have much higher CapEx, I would assume, much more moving parts and complexity. And so they are two different animals, and those things can fit, they can fit right next to each other and provide really a wide wealth of experiences for customers and operators as well.
Look, I think a lot of it comes down to the unit economics of a site as well, and the operator's ability to market and operate an efficient venue. If like any business, if you get a great rent deal and you've got good staff and you know how to manage something and market it, you can make good money out of a free roam VR installation. It is pretty early. We rolled out our first system. It's a 2-player multiplayer system in 2014 and monetized that. But what we learned pretty quickly is people need to play with a friend or more friends. That was really, really important. But also, initially we wanted to have sort of 6,000 square feet, but we rapidly went to our first IAPA and everyone's like, that's way too big. No one can afford to put that anywhere. So I think we're still trying to find, as a company, as an industry, the right mix of throughput and how much space is enough and how much entertainment is enough and how good does the content need to be. Because if you've got to bring an IP in and then you're going to spend, $5 to $6 million developing that, are you ever going to get your money back? It's still a really tricky proposition, I think, to work out where that secret sauce is.
And hopefully we all come up with different solutions because there's different styles of play, there's different interactions, there's different footprints. And I always make this analogy. It's not Starbucks or Pete's. It's not Honda or Toyota. You put these things together like they do at 2-bit, put things together and you're going to get, 1 + 1 = 3. And as long as these stay more and more differentiated and the experiences are really unique and purposeful, I think we can really bring a lot to the market.
But do you think there's an option for larger mega centers where all these different attractions are brought together without cannibalizing each other?
Oh, I definitely think so.
I agree.
I definitely think so.
I definitely think so too. Seems like I think it really comes down to guest experience too. When they come out of these things, and I know that you guys have seen the same thing, it's a wow experience. It's like it's much different than these 8-station arcades where it's the same thing you can get at home, and it's a very physical type experience. And I think even with you, I think they come out of it feeling like it's a physical experience, even though that isn't there, which is really remarkable that we're building these types of platforms.
You're taking the 3 major senses, essentially, their sight, sound, and you do have a physical prop. We've got one game without a physical prop, and it's super trippy, like an MC Escher kind of acid trip, so it's pretty immersive, but you don't have a prop. But without that level of intensity, you do need to ground yourself, but even just grounding yourself with good one-to-one movement and something in your hands, you're taking 3 senses. Yeah, I agree. It feels like you've been on a journey, for sure.
So let's say we have some people here who are very interested in investing in this large warehouse scale type of experiences. What are the top requirements to run a successful warehouse scale VR business? Tim touched a little bit on it on the operators, but yeah.
I think that initial moment when the guest walks up to the experience is very important. You need to really prepare them for what they're about to do. Initially, we thought that we could say, hey, this is a brand new thing, go off and enjoy. And by the end, they're like, well, geez, I missed this and this and this. I wish I would have known about that. And so it's just learning that you have to fully prepare someone. You only have this 10, 15-minute experience they're about to go on. And so preparing them in advance, making sure you have all the hygiene issues in place, which I'm sure all of our platforms come with, and that you're executing those well, watching that your people are accurately cleaning these headsets, because if you miss 1 or 2 of these, that guest experience goes down, and it's really important.
Yeah, it's true. The guest experience starts well before you're actually in the space. And then from a venue perspective, I think the number of staff that you have to operate it, the complexity of operation, and revenue per square foot are the kind of key KPIs that we look at.
Yeah, I echo all that. It's on the money.
So could you spend a little time on sort of the journey and the story of your company, the things that you've tried originally? I imagine what you're doing now is very different from what you guys originally started off with. What was that journey like, and what did you learn as you went through those experiences with the business model, with the experiences, everything, and what are the pitfalls that you learned? The things that work, the things that don't work.
So when we started building the technology back in 2012, and getting a tracking system up and running and making sure that you can have one person got one person working in a 5x5 meter space, so kind of like a Vive. That was all Scott Van Donkler's work to create that tracking system. I guess things that we learned, we did a crowdfunding campaign, so we basically had about 300 or 400 people come through. We took a bunch of surveys, and what we learned is people like social aspects of it. They like to travel through more worlds. So they don't just want to be in a little box shooting. They want to feel like they've gone on an adventure. That was really, really important. And then we tried a bunch of stuff early on. We tried props in the space. We tried like an IMU tracking prototype with all these sensors. And it was just a nightmare. Like, you realize getting people in and out really quickly, being able to basically refine an incredibly complicated stack and turn it into a play button, that's really, really, really important. You guys are really noisy. Do you want to take that outside? It's okay. Thanks. So I think there's some of the things that we sort of wanted to cover really early in the piece. So to make sure that we could build something that an operator can install at a reasonable price and charge something that's realistic. Like, you can make an amazing experience over sort of, 800-900 square meters with full body tracking and a massive OptiTrack system, but ultimately no one's going to be able to afford to install that or run it or play it. So we rapidly refined our system down to, okay, what's the minimum technology we can deliver to get the best experience so we can actually sell it at a reasonable price?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a lot of trying and a lot of failing and figuring out exactly what the customer wants as well as the venue. For us, we're lucky that our home office is inside one of these venues, and so we're able to test things off of them and talk. But I think what's really cool, and Doug, kind of to your point, is this doesn't really feel like Xbox and PlayStation because they are so different, and everyone's bringing these different things to the table that I think that we're learning as we go what the customer wants, and the customer wants what you have, and the customer wants what you have and what I have. And so it's pretty cool to kind of watch that as it grows.
What do you think of the three main things the customer takes away from it or really enjoys that you wouldn't get rid of?
I think that moment when they transport to another place is big. It's not just walking in one little world. It's when they make that transport when they're inside the world, when you kind of blow their mind that they could actually be in that other place. For us, a lot of times it's the elements. It's heat, cold, wind, those types of things. When I have a 75-year-old couple holding hands and they're like, honey, doesn't this feel like a September wind? And I'm like, it's a fan, and I'm standing right behind you and you're kissing. So it's awkward.
It's a bit awkward, yeah.
No, I think those kind of
How do they do that with the headset, by the way?
They did
That's
it, man.
impressive.
They're 75.
50 years of marriage.
Yeah, they've done it a
worked that
long
out.
time. They understand. It's kind of like a sideways. No, and so I think those types of things, when each person finds something different. We have a cat in our experience, and when people go into these things and they're a little, trepidatious, and they kind of are like, I'm not sure, and they see the cat, and you kind of see their body feel comfortable. And so finding things that make people feel comfortable while transported to another realm is pretty important.
Yeah, from the beginning of Nomadic, we really wanted to do interacting physically with the virtual world. So that's stuff we were testing right away. One of our co-founders was head of the ILM model shop for 14 years. We got some really great, talented people working on this stuff. There were surprises along the way, like disappointments. At one point in our Arizona Sunshine experience, there was an actual zombie, physical zombie that you had to physically interact with, and you lift up a visor on his helmet, and of course we're measuring the rotation of this visor, rendering this thing out, and he's got a motor in his helmet, and he would come to life and shake, and we thought that was going to be the pinnacle. Turned out to be a little disappointing. It just never quite lived up to what we thought. The team came up with another idea of having this motion platform helicopter, which honestly I never thought was going to work. And it is one of everyone's favorite. The guests that go through it say it's their favorite moment. And so sometimes you're surprised by things, both positive and negative. And it's early, and I think it's great to experiment and just try a wide variety of things. So.
I'm blanking out one sec. So given each of your companies does very, very specialized, very custom compared to just a booth, single booth, standalone in-home type of offering, it's essentially sort of forced the business you guys to create everything full stack, right? The hardware, the build out, the software platform that manages all of that, the experiences as well. Where is your long-term strategy with doing the full stack, and where do you see democratization of the platform, or bringing in other third parties or content or things like that and growing of your platform since you've been, had years to mature now since?
Yeah, when we started, we thought we were going to build content. We moved away from that reasonably early. We did think we were going to have to build a full stack. We built our first backpacks as well. I was at a Rite Aid, pharmacy one day, and I noticed a small Zotac on the back of a monitor, and I contacted Zotac, and I said, have you ever thought, you do small form factor PCs, have you ever thought about doing a backpack? And lo and behold, they came out with one shortly thereafter, not because I suggested. No, it was already in the works. So we've moved away. We used to build our own pistol. We now use Striker. We're very happy to integrate third-party components and not build a complete stack, if at all possible, and to focus, have laser focus on the things that are really valuable for us in terms of that physical environment. We have you walk through doorways that have magnetic locks that automatically unlock and lock and things like that. We focus a lot on that physical platform. We've got a bunch of patents around that now. It's very modular. It's almost like a giant set of Legos. If you want to swap out and have a different physical environment, you just disconnect the walls from the floor, move them, lock them into place. It's very slick and makes it very easy for us to roll out, new content without weeks of downtime in construction crews and such. And we focus on that integration into our platform and SDK as well. So that's really our core. And we've moved away as much as possible. If someone's going to build something, a component that works well, we'd much rather have a reliable supplier than build it ourselves.
And I think, to Doug's point again, that you mentioned, Jeremy, that these are very custom, but I think the goal of what we're doing is that they aren't very custom, that we have a set of tools that allows developers to put these Legos together and create these worlds. So I think that's important as we start to build out more and more of these pieces that people can create incredible worlds from.
I think it changes every sort of 12 to 18 months depending on where the technology moves. I think there's things that we built our own backpacks initially from computer store components, and then there was a Steam box we could use from Alienware, and now we can get an HP backpack. There's so many different threads I think being built at the moment. It's really hard to tell where it's all going to go in the next 2 to 3 years. I think it seems like it's in a pretty fast growth patch. It was all about Lighthouse 2.0, and then even HTC seems to have abandoned that and gone down the inside-out tracking. It seems to be changing. I think it's settling down now. I think, from a stack point of view, inside-out SLAM tracking is the future. Everyone gets that. It's scalable. It's the cheapest way to do it. There's pros and cons, but ultimately it's a better platform than outside-in tracking. And then I think there's just going to be a bunch of, you've got standalones coming out. Is that going to be good? Is that going to be enough power? Are they going to be reliable? You've got backpacks, more high-end stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out, which I think it will over the next sort of 24 months.
So sort of following up on the democratization of the platforms and bringing partners potentially here in this room, if somebody were interested in working with you guys on the hardware or the software or the experiences, where are each of your businesses in terms of process and being able to work with them, and where are you guys at with sort of accepting those types of interested parties and partnerships?
Well, we've started working with pilot developers now, and we have an SDK, like Jeremy, that we're starting to work with and kind of help them understand how best to do these kind of walkthrough experiences and, connect with our fan systems and Rumble systems and that kind of thing. We're nowhere close to where we want to be, and I think, like you were saying, it's just going to change over the next years, and since we're in such an early medium, I think that it'll just get better and better to be able to work with these types of materials. But we've looked through different, kind of haptic vests and that kind of thing, and starting to bring some of those into the platform as well. You mentioned Striker and some other things. I think we're all excited to see others building this so that we can focus on our core activities.
Well, leading up to that, then I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. So I'd like to, do we have microphones? And do we have any questions? Oh, yeah.
We can hear you.
Questions, anybody?
You just touched this question. So there is a mobile headset, $6 headsets coming, and you guys invested quite enough money on this custom tracking. Do you feel it's a threat to you? Because basically you can have 10 people in the same room having Oculus like Quest and free roaming and go anywhere. And
I mean, I think there's room for mobile integrated headsets for sure. We all work on sort of these premium products, premium experiences. I think the rendering should be premium as well. And certainly if you got a 1080 on your back, you're going to have better rendering than you're going to have if you got an iPhone or Samsung Galaxy inside your headset. Eventually, I think what you're going to see is more powerful GPUs move to mobile market. And maybe 3 to 5 years down the line, it's going to be incredible what you're going to be able to do on a small form factor. But we're very happy right now with the backpacks. People put them on, and within moments, they completely forget that they have them. We use HP as well. They're really light. They're really easy to manage. People completely forget about it. Yeah.
I don't think it's a threat. I think it's an opportunity. The more great hardware comes out that can be built on top of, happy days. Having grounded out in like 2013, building everything from scratch, like bring it on. I say, bring on as much new, exciting hardware as possible.
Right. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great presentation as always. This is the tough one. We've been talking to a number of game developers, and some people are looking, consumer games developers, and looking at location-based entertainment maybe as the fifth platform. You've got the mobile games, you've got the consoles. Do you think you guys could make a completely open platform where you could share software between each other and other people could put content onto that?
I do think that's possible, and it's something that's in the back of our mind. Ultimately, our business is a platform that's partly physical, partly digital, and certainly we consider that opportunity of whether we could supply the physical components and the SDKs to other developers, and they could build that as well. It's not something we're working on today, but all the components are there, and we've had interest from what you might consider competitors about doing partnerships in that respect as well. And I think it's a great opportunity. And of course, we all eventually want to get to a point where this is easy to develop, easy to deploy, easy to manage, and that's one step in that direction.
Can you guys talk a little bit about the challenges that you might face with your customers? When you go do a deal with a location, you're trying to put your setup in the location. What are some of the challenges, obstacles, resistance you might get?
Is this venue customers or end customers?
The venue customers. So if you're putting it into an FEC or if you're putting it into a mall or something like that, what are the challenges you're facing with those guys in terms of the way they're negotiating with you and what they want, what you want, where the divide is sometimes?
We get a huge amount of inbound interest, so there's a lot of people coming to us wanting to install them. So I think the issue, it's really just around price and size, probably the biggest things. Where do you fit it in and how does that work, and making sure it fits into the physical spaces would be probably one of the bigger challenges, both of which we've solved, I think, with our Gen 2 product, which is exciting. But the people that normally, either people don't want it, they don't see it future at all, and they don't want to do it, or they're like, I'm excited by this, let's make it work. There's very few people in the middle, essentially, in my mind. You can't bring someone across that doesn't think that their venue is going to do, there's no way anyone's going to pay $50 to play a game here because I'm charging $1.50 for this thing. You know what I mean? So I think that as long as they have the right attitude towards sort of pricing something premium and the rest of the offerings inside their venue, I think it's a pretty walk-up start. Though having said that, a lot of zero latency venues are standalone, or they've got one like a premium go-kart track, so similar demographics, similar price, and it's a logical fit. You can't sort of force it in somewhere where it doesn't make sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Are there certain deal structure issues that you're having trouble with in terms of when you push your deal structure on them? Are they resisting in any way?
There's always resistance, but that's part of negotiating, isn't it, really? No one loves the first price you give them, no matter what it is. I think for where we are now, that there's not a lot of pushback on the royalty fee. They get a lot for that. The bigger challenge is when, we'd have, but having said that, if we were like, we're going to now do this IP and they want 20%, they would literally just walk out of the room. I think the challenge is not so much the operators, it's getting everyone in the sort of headspace of an operator where the overheads are big, their commitments are big, the risk they're taking is big. For someone insert big studio here to go, I want 30%. It's like, that's just not going to work in this environment unless you want to fund it all yourself, you know what I mean? So I think that's a bigger challenge in terms of, it's like any deal, you just got to prove value. If you're just saying, oh, it's a game and it's 18%, what are you going to do? Nothing. But if you say, oh, we're going to keep making content, you're going to get that for free. We're going to support your software as a service platform. We're going to do this management platform. We've got your booking engine there. We've got 24/7 support. If it breaks, you send it back to us and we advance ship it. All the stuff that zero latency does, they get it. And that's why over 50% of our customers have bought a second system.
And I think
Sales pitch.
these venues are used to this. I mean, like when we're talking about museums, science centers, this is their life of bringing in traveling exhibits and negotiating all those royalties and rates and that kind of thing. And like you said, it's one of the challenges maybe is that we are trying to become those sort of standard platform as far as pricing. It's like Apple says, look, we take a 30% on every single developer and there's no questions asked. It doesn't really happen in this kind of world. So there is some pushback, but at the same time, they're used to it. And I think the setup cost is usually kind of one of the bigger questions. And then royalties generally they don't usually have a problem with because they understand they need new content. They need really compelling content to bring in instead of one and done. So.
Our bigger issues early on were making sure it was written in the contract that we are going to make content every year. If that makes sense. Like, they didn't mind paying the money. It's like, but we want more contractual, like you need to be locked in more to what you're going to be delivering.
Any other questions? All right. If that's all, then we're going to go ahead. Thank you to our panelists. Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.